And it's now time for a motion to adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson, JP.
And welcome to Motion to Adjourn. And for this time as well, we are both in the studio. So it is another very great occasion. Hill family is here. Welcome back, Mr. Famous, MP Famous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How you doing? I'm sorry I wasn't here last week.
Don't worry, it was fine.
It was fine.
Yeah.
You made up. You pulled the extra.
Yeah. I mean, it's we've been doing this. We've been in the rigmarole for a little bit now.
Rigmarole. Sound like a young guy. Well, good afternoon, brother Dwayne and brother Dawn, and special guest, my nephew Matty, all the way from Halifax.
Yes, sir.
Come down to defrost for a couple of days.
That's how you do it. Except for this gale force wind. It might make it a little hard, but we're working on it.
I when we left the house, I was like, "You want Jackie?" I said, "No, I'm good. I'm good, Uncle." And so today we have a special. Who's our special guest today?
Well, we got Mr. Ron from the Virgin Islands, and I'm interested to hear about his station and what he's got going on.
Okay, brother Ron.
Hey, how are you doing? How are the people of Bermuda doing? Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. So today's guest is as we continue our quest to educate ourselves about our sister territories. Mm-hmm. Today's guest is Mr. Ron Grant, one of the Virgin Islands' top broadcast journalists and media specialists, and overall a very nice, well-informed young man and father.
Yeah, we love to hear it.
All right. So today we have the pleasure of Mr. Ron Grant. So I'll let Dwayne start us off. Let me introduce you to the crew, Ron. We have my co-host, which is Dwayne Robinson, and the engineer in charge is Mr. Dawn Bassett.
Welcome to the show.
I have to ask you: is everybody from Bermuda, or are we all Caribbean counterparts? Is everybody from different parts?
All from Bermuda.
That's an interesting question there, because I'm sure the bloodlines might trace to different islands there.
I like to trace the bloodline.
Yeah.
Well, while you're here, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. Could you just tell the listening audience here in Bermuda a bit about yourself?
So, as you mentioned, my name is Ron Grant. I was born and raised in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. I had the opportunity of not only training in broadcast media and spending about 10 years away in California, just really training and zoning in on the art of media and communications in particular. Since returning back home to the Virgin Islands in 2015, I took on the role of reporter at Tweet4 Media, which in 2018 became a new broadcast agency, one that really seeks to divulge a truth and portray the Virgin Islands and make sure that the people are witnessing history in the making. Outside of that, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I am all things Caribbean. I consider myself a true island boy, really encompassing Caribbean culture in all things. So that's a little bit about myself. A young professional. My wife and I also own and operate an academic learning center here in the Virgin Islands. So from kindergarten straight up to adults who want to get their high school diploma. Outside of reporting and outside of media, outside of her teaching, we are really putting into perspective and making sure that we're contributing to the best of our society. So that's a little bit about myself.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go to our first break real fast. And when we come back, we'll get a bit more into what you do and, the network you're affiliated with.
Sure.
Double the zen for your mind and body during the month of November at the Exhale Spa and Gym. Book a 60-minute massage or facial Monday through Friday and receive a second 60-minute spa therapy for $99, a treatment valued of $195. Find your zen at the Exhale Spa at Hamilton Princess and Beach Club. Call 298-6046 for more information. Offer valid November 1st to the 30th. Terms and conditions apply.
Take control of your Butterfield credit card by downloading the Butterfield Card Alerts app. Monitor your spending activity with real-time transaction alerts sent directly to your mobile device. And if your card is lost or stolen, use the app to turn the card off, preventing any further transactions from being processed. Download the app from the Apple Store or Google Play Store today. Customized credit card controls. This is banking by Butterfield. The Bank of N.T. Butterfield & Son Limited is licensed to conduct banking business by the Bermuda Monetary Authority.
A new CCTV system is in the pipeline to assist police in tackling violent crime and road traffic offenses, according to National Security Minister Michael Weeks. Mr. Weeks said the project to implement an island-wide system was put out to tender, and it's now up to a cabinet committee to decide which company will be awarded the contract. He added that the ministry could not provide any cost estimates at this stage of the process. A new partnership with a UK-based charity will help to better coordinate services for victims of domestic violence in Bermuda. Speaking during a parenting event this afternoon, the minister says the partnership is designed to help keep victims safe. Recent data from 2021 shows 168 children were referred to the Department of Child and Family Services for exposure to domestic violence. The minister believes a new survey will also guide future policies related to domestic violence. Police have begun an investigation into an incident which took place in the area of the tennis stadium on Marsh Folly Road, Pembroke, between 5 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. on Friday, November 4th. Investigators are interested in speaking with anyone who may be able to identify the two persons in CCTV footage they are circulating or the motorcycle they were traveling on. Anyone with information regarding the two suspects or the motorbike is asked to contact the investigating officer, Acting Sergeant Odessa Phillip, on 717-2193. You may also call 211 or the main police number on 295-0011.
Now back to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
And welcome back to Motion to Adjourn. Mr. Grant, are you still with us?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Could you just let the people of Bermuda know a little thing about the 284 News?
So as I was saying before we took the break, gentlemen, 284 News is a broadcast company, of course, really solidified itself since 2018 and coming on stream and bringing to the people of the Virgin Islands the best of witnessing history in the making. Essentially, when we look at news, we look at broadcast journalism, we have not only focused locally, but we have broadened our horizons to make sure that we're connecting with our regional counterparts across the Caribbean to just really connect the dots. One of the things that I've noticed since being in the field since 2010 is essentially that a lot of times we think that our issues are isolated. We think that only our islands or only our territories or countries are going through whatever we're going through, and that's far from the truth. So if we're able to just connect the dots and connect with our brothers and sisters across the region, while, of course, making sure that we're keeping our local people informed, we would be better informed as a region and not just as a territory. So that's holistically what we try to really push for at 284 Media. All persons, two of my colleagues, one is from Barbados, the other is from St. Lucia. We have a team of media professionals, two of whom are from the British Virgin Islands and others from Guyana. So there's just a melting pot of talent. And I'd be proud to say, because I'm 32, there's a melting pot of young media professionals that really are able to chronicle their talent and their expertise to make the best product possible.
And you know, I enjoy hearing about youth-run initiatives. So I'm really excited to hear about that. And I do believe that it is going to be that generation, our generation, that is going to really kind of bridge the gap. You know, following MP Famous's generation, you know, there's slightly older folks. I don't want to get into how old, but you know.
We're not going to do that today.
Yeah.
Let's go ageism. But anyway, go right here. Go right here, sons.
Listen, so do you believe, Mr. Grant, that, you know, the division, or at least us being more solitary in our issues is by design. That, the region is not necessarily as pulled together as it should be, being as though we are so similar in culture.
So we're deliberate, and we're. I'm going to say this and be very brutally honest with you. I think we're ignorantly deliberate because we think we're in it ourselves, and we want to sometimes, especially in times of crisis, we want to pull ourselves. We tend to rather pull ourselves away from each other. Be it point in case when we look at regional matters. I give the British Virgin Islands as a prime example. Our former premier, as you guys may know, has been arrested and charged for a number of charges. Recently, this week, the U.S. authorities added racketeering to his charges, in addition to that of the former Ports Authority. Issues of this matter, whether it be criminal or natural disasters, again, are not isolated. They're not subject to one island. But what we tend to do as a region when a brother or sister across the region, whether it be 45 minutes plane ride or boat ride, is going through something, we tend to sit back and retract and retrieve ourselves. And I'm not saying that at the end of the day we need to put ourselves in an even more vulnerable position. What I'm saying is that when we look at issues from Commission of Inquiries dating back to Montserrat, dating back to TCI, and now, of course, the British Virgin Islands, they're not isolated. It's the same channel of events. So if we were to be able to align ourselves a bit more, if we were able to or willing to have conversations with colleagues, whether they be still sitting in Parliament or retired, and just align our professionals of all ages and allow ourselves to understand that what you guys are maybe experiencing in Bermuda, whether it be crime or education, is pretty much the same thing that we're experiencing. We are stronger together, and this is something that we've heard all too well. But for some reason, in cases of turmoil and tragedy, we tend to separate. And I don't think that's in the best interest of our all Caribbean brothers and sisters and territories on a whole.
I agree. And do you see any movement in this space as far as the region kind of pulling together? I know MP Famous is one of the region trackers. He gets around and kind of represents Bermuda in that space. But do you see any sort of movement or any sort of push to connect as a region?
So as a Virgin Islander, the first example of pulling together, I must admit, would be the most recent with the Commission of Inquiry that was done and conducted on the Virgin Islands. I would honestly say that the OECS and our counterparts in the OECS from a number of different islands really spoke up. I would have appreciated if more of our counterparts across the OECS would have stood up. But nevertheless, many of them did speak up, and they literally, in layman's terms, said, listen, leave the Virgin Islands alone, leave the BVI alone, take your hands off of Tatola, because based on the energy and the semantics that were taking place, it seemed as though every bit of mistakes that were taking place, whether it be the highest part of office, were looked at and deemed the end of the Virgin Islands in financial services, in every aspect of our being. And there were many, many leaders who, and I do believe that some more than others wanted to come forward, but they didn't. But there were a number of them who came forward and said, listen, leave the Virgin Islands alone, take your hand off of them. What you're doing is wrong. What the UK is doing, what they're trying to impose is wrong. The suggestion of direct rule, the suggestion of the suspension of the Constitution is wrong, and you need to leave the Virgin Islands alone. That's an example, the most recent, I would say, as it pertains to a Caribbean community connecting the dots and coming together and just standing up for your brothers and sisters.
Okay. And just for the listening audience of folks who may not know in Bermuda what the situation is that you're referring to as far as the British asserting direct rule, would you be able to give us a brief synopsis of that?
Absolutely. So the former governor, Augustus J.U. Jasper, filed a commission of inquiry a few years ago upon departing office And since then, a commission of inquiry has been conducted in the Virgin Islands. And not only since then, but we are experiencing now a recent slew of arrests and charges of not only former ministers but public officials within the public service. Now, backtracking a little bit, or rather, I'm sorry, just after the Commission of Inquiry was released, our former premier, Andrew Foy, was arrested along with the former director of ports in Miami. They were both attending, in part, a conference, a sea trade conference, if I'm not mistaken. And while transitioning through the airport, they were arrested and charged. Of course, officials within the United States Virgin Islands have since presented a number of transcripts, affidavits, which in they were conducting a investigation for a number of months, if not years, on the Virgin Islands, and the daunting circumstances and allegations of those transcripts really put into perspective the porous borders of the territory, the level of corruption, and most importantly, the fact that there is instances where situations happen, and we put our trust in public officials, but they may not necessarily hold that in the highest accord. With that being said, both officials, and the former ports director, William Maynard, her son, are both arrested, along with our former premier Andrew Foy. They're detained. I know the former premier, he is no longer detained. He is on house arrest, and they are awaiting trial in 2023, January of 2023. So just after the COI recommendations came out, this took place. The governor sent out an email and said this is what has transpired. They are arrested and charged. These are two of the most prominent officials, and I think it really put into perspective the magnitude of what we perhaps never imagined as a territory. Of course, since that period, the territory essentially went through a period of mourning, shock, disbelief, disappointment. And I think moving forward, they have transitioned not to the point that we would like, but they've transitioned enough to try to move forward. A unity government was formed. The Deputy Premier, Dr. the Honorable Natalia D. Wheatley, being Deputy Premier, was appointed chairman of the ruling Virgin Islands Party and created the unity government, which formed persons from the opposition alongside his government. We are now constitutionally due for elections by March of 2023. There are a lot of stipulations and concerns regarding a by-election. At first, the premier was saying that a by-election will be held, and based on the timeline of the former premier, being absent, Andrew Foy, that a by-election will happen. The narrative is now changing, and they're saying that perhaps that won't happen. But based on the timeline, at least, if not a by-election, a general election will take place we're hopeful, rather, that it will take place by March of next year. So you have a constitution that, in some cases, persons are saying that leaders are seemingly waiting on the governor to give the okay or the go-to. You have a district, electoral district that has been without representation for quite some time. Persons are again questioning why this is. So there's a lot going on in the Virgin Islands, quite a bit, just quite a bit as it pertains to the political climate, the future of the people, and more so the stability of holding on to a territory that persons have worked so diligently and hard for.
Thank you for that, Brother Ron. What are in your daily interactions, what are the top regional stories this week?
So we have a lot of regional stories. I must admit that based on what I've been tracking, we have not only what's going on in the BVI, but of course over in the USVI, Governor Albert Bryan and his Lieutenant Governor Tregenza Roach, they were re-elected for a second term over in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I happen to be in the USVI for the election. Of course, their top go-getters, their top components were the VLA and Saru team, a younger team, both senators serving in the Senate of the U.S. Virgin Islands. But at the end of the day, at the end of the evening, Governor Bryant regained his seat. Of course, we have a lot going on in Barbados. Madam, the Honorable Mia Motley has continued to really traverse and speak, and I would dare say, in many cases, be a representative for the region as it pertains to not only climate change, but a number of matters. And while I'm there on Barbados and Mia Motley, I want to say something, guys. Persons tend to, just take for example, persons tend to, and I'm not sure if it's the same on Bermuda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but persons tend to look at someone like Mia Motley and hold her in the most highest accord and really salute her as a Caribbean leader. But one of the things that I want us to remember as regional leaders is that if we don't represent, if we don't speak up for our people, if we don't really articulate the needs of our country and our territories, then other persons without knowledge will then begin to form their own narratives and form their own stories. And one of the things that I see Mia Motley doing is really zoning in and controlling that narrative and not allowing anyone to dictate the narrative for Barbados but her. Of course, there's a lot going on in TCI as it pertains to a high crime rate. That's just really, I think, crippling, really crippling Turks and Caicos Islands. And I wish that we could come to a conclusion, come to some middle ground as a Caribbean region and figure out how we could get a hand on violence. But those would be my top three. Of course, the USVI, Barbados, and of course, the severe situation of gun violence and gang violence over in TCI.
Yeah, also there has been in St. Lucia and Dominica, there was some severe weather systems over the weekend where
Yes.
I don't want to say, I think luckily only one person lost their life, but a lot of villages, especially the northern side of St. Lucia, were flooded out. Right? Not like flooded away, but just flooded. And in Dominica on the eastern side, they had some severe rain where someone lost their life as well.
We also experienced quite a bit of a flash flood here in the territory as well as some other regions across. We definitely, based on the weather forecasts that we've experienced this past weekend, we definitely were anticipating some flash floods, but thankfully that was not the case.
Yeah, and then do you want to talk about the politics in Dominica right now? What happened recently?
So unfortunately, I have not actually been keeping up, but I do know that they're having a by-election. Am I correct?
No, they're having so what happened is on the last week, Friday, the Prime Minister of Dominica, Honorable Roosevelt Scarrett, he called a snap election.
Snap election, that's it.
Snap election. You know what a snap election is, man?
I vaguely recall what a snap election is.
So he called a snap election. The next election constitutionally isn't due until 2025, but across the world, in most civilized countries, prime ministers or premiers have the privilege of calling a snap election. You understand that to me?
Yes.
It might not always be the most cost-efficient thing, but they do have the privilege to do it.
Okay.
Yes.
So he called a snap election, and the main opposition, the United Workers' Party, UWP, they protested, well, not actually came out and protested, but they sent out these notes saying, it's unfair, why are you calling a snap election, blah, blah, blah. So 2 days later, yesterday, they sent out a note saying that they aren't going to contest, they aren't going to run anybody in the election because they feel it's fraudulent, blah, blah, blah. But basically what happened is they were not ready. As how the Kevin Hart thing goes, Maddie? How Kevin Hart goes? He wasn't ready. They weren't ready. So basically what happened is because they didn't even have a leader. Their leader quit like a month ago, October, the leader of the opposition quit, and they hadn't replaced him as yet. So they don't have a leader, they don't have candidates, and they just say, you know what, we're not even going to run. So today, a coalition sort of opposition came out where they've called themselves Team Unity, and they are going to put together a slate of candidates to run in the election, which is December the 6th, basically, about 3 weeks away. So that's what's happening.
Gentlemen, we've seen a lot of unity governments form across the region within the past few years. Of course, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis being one of them. And there's a lot going on with unity governments in the formation of that. I want to bring your attention, gentlemen, to the snap election, because one of the things that was an agreement in our COI recommendations after the unity government signed on to, one of the agreements was to not have a snap election. They are held in accordance with not having a snap election, which really beckons that it's not that an election in the first place won't happen, but it would have to be constitutionally due by the preferred timeline. And that's one of the agreements that came on board. You cannot have a snap election, but snap elections are usually what happen. You just kind of you're out of time and a lot's going on, and you call an election.
Yeah. So and then also moving away from politics back to rather in the northern islands of Bahamas, they had tropical storm Nicole passed through yesterday. So, but luckily, once again, it wasn't a severe storm, so they kind of got away with some little bit of, I don't want to say flooding, but coastal erosion. But it wasn't no lives lost once again. So, moving on, Brother Ron, what tell us about this other series that you have, Distinguished Gentlemen.
Oh man, that's my baby. That project has been going on for a long time. It's actually in its fourth season. And to be honest with you, gentlemen, the project actually came about back in California, where I was a student. And I would do these little experiments as it pertains to just interacting with persons. And I realized that the end goal for a lot of African American and Caribbean men in a different environment outside of their home was based on their presentation. And I would do the experiments, and let's take for example, I would walk down the street one day in what we call a white is a vest, and some basketball shorts and some slippers, and I would get little to no attention. And on the days that I had presentations, I would wear my suit and tie. I had to go, and I would get the nods, the hellos, the good mornings, the winks. And I took
define winks.
I was about to say.
What sort of winks you were getting, bro?
A wink is a wink.
A wink is a wink. I know what wink means in Bermuda.
Yeah.
I don't know if it means the same thing in the Virgin Islands.
He took the words.
I don't know what it means in Bermuda, but a wink that I'm referring to in the United States is literally a wink with your eye, like I see you. So women would just, wink. They would give you that smirk, that smile.
Ooh.
I'm not sure if it's the same thing in Bermuda, is it?
Sorta.
What more in Canada, man?
So we're all a bit on the same page, but it put into perspective the difference in presentation, and I brought that concept back to the Virgin Islands. And The Art of a Distinguished Gentleman, for which I'm the creator and host, is really a show that is poised to help guide modern-day men into 21st century distinguished gentlemen. It does not always involve suits and bow ties. It's not about dressing. You can be a person of, it doesn't matter what profession, but it really encompasses the characteristic of being the best version of yourself. And each season, we feature 12 episodes of persons from different demographics. I'd like to give the example of my grandfather and my father, who were both construction. My grandfather was a construction worker. My dad is a mechanic, both from Nevis. And these gentlemen one is the epitome of a distinguished gentleman. He's a mechanic, but you never see him with his nails dirty. He got on his overall, but on Sunday he's going to church and he's well dressed. A lot of persons hear the term distinguished gentleman and they automatically assume or put it as it pertains to, oh, I got to wear a jacket and tie every day. That is far from the truth. What the show is really geared toward just presenting the best and brightest of Virgin Islands men and putting into perspective what we are as individuals and making sure that the world sees that. And I dare like to say that I think we're ready to spread that across the region because there are a lot of good stuff and there are a lot of amazing examples of amazing men across the region.
All right, so we're going to go to our last break and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up.
Welcome to the new bulk store, Lindo's Next Level. Wake up in the morning with enough coffee to keep you running throughout the entire day. Your pet at home deserves the best. Stock up on dog food to keep your puppy happy. Need a quick, tasty lunch at home? Your chicken nuggets will be jumping right out of the freezer. What's a movie night without popcorn? You can never have too much. Lindo's Next Level. Why go anyplace else?
The family farmers who own Welch's insist on making 100% grape juice with no added sugar, colors, or flavors. At harvest time, they pick Concord and Niagara grapes at the peak of their flavor and deliver them within hours to be fresh pressed into delicious Welch's 100% grape juice. Rich in antioxidants, our grape juice adds bold flavor and a nutritional boost to your diet. Visit Welch's.com for healthy recipes.
Mommy, why can't dogs talk? Why do I have to go to school and you don't? Why do you sing in the morning when you're bad at it? Why don't you brush your teeth when you take me to school? Why doesn't it ever snow here? Why does Daddy take the bus to work? Why are trees so tall? Why don't you tell me where babies come from? Mommy, Mommy, Mommy!
We're like a kid that doesn't ask a million questions before noon. CG Insurance. Good like that.
Talking Beauty with Sasha Benton, skincare specialist and owner of Benton Aesthetic. Bermuda's most elite spa where the focus is on your skin's health. Customized treatments ranging from dermaplaning, acne boot camp, skin tag treatments to laser lipo. We have what you need to put your face and body forward. Tune in every other Tuesday at 8:45 a.m. on Power 95 for an exciting segment on how to improve your skin's health.
Now back to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
And welcome back to Motion to Adjourn. Mr. Grant, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. Would you like to impart any other words to the people of Bermuda before we wrap up?
Well, gentlemen, I first want to thank you both for the opportunity to being able to address not only your audience and the people of Bermuda, but of course, just touching on a lot of the matters that are affecting us. At the end of the day, we're stronger together. Caribbean region, I think that we holistically need to come together and be mindful of a lot of the matters that are facing us. And I do wish the very best for not only the people of Bermuda, but of course, likewise for my brothers and sisters over here in the Virgin Islands. So thank you for the opportunity. And maybe I'll stop by one of these days and bring you guys some tart, whether it's guava, coconut, pineapple. I'll bring you guys some treats.
Yeah.
And enjoy some,
you stop by on your way to collect your Emmy.
And I'll stop in Bermuda, not a problem.
So
I'll drop some tata.
Just real quick, is there any way for anyone to be able to tune in to your Distinguished Gentleman show online?
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. So our platform, it is available on 284media.com. That's the number 284, our area code, media, media.com. The show airs every Wednesday at 8 p.m. and it's also available on Facebook at 284 Media. That of course plays regularly news content as well. We're on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, you can find us on Instagram at the Distinguished Gentleman on Instagram if you want to follow us. Just tune in and really put into perspective and see some of the most remarkable human beings, the best and brightest of the British Virgin Islands.
Thank you so much.
And before you go, what's next for Ron Grant? Put that way, and family.
I'm actually in my driveway right now. So what's next? In the moment, I'm gonna walk in the house and my son is gonna say, "Dad, I reached. Dad, I reached." So I'm gonna,
Okay.
of course, spend some time with him. But on a more realistic scene, of course, there's a book coming, "The Art of a Distinguished Gentleman," which really chronicles the movement of my personal experiences as a distinguished gentleman and chronicling my life experiences and putting that on pen to paper. We also have a podcast. So for each of our seasons, season 1, season 2, season 3, right up to season 4, for persons who may not be inclined or not interested in watching video and you're more audio listeners, a podcast is coming for each of our seasons beginning in January of 2023. So just two major projects, and really, gentlemen, just continuing to be the best that I can be, the best version of myself, serving my community wholeheartedly, and making sure that the public, making sure that the people are not only witnessing history in the making, but that generations to come, like my son, have the best examples of just good, down-to-earth, wholehearted, decent men as examples to look up to. So that's within my reach.
All right, my brother. Well, thank you for your time, and we look forward to more from the distinguished gentleman, not only of the Virgin Islands but of the region.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you so much for the people of Bermuda for tuning in. Happy Thursday to everyone, and have a great weekend.
All right.
Yes, thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. And with that, we are going to close with tributes to two distinguished gentlemen of Bermuda. From up the country, Mr. Alden Rayner of Southampton, of the Rayners of Southampton Rayners. You want to say any words on Bob? Okay. So for those that don't know him, he was, well, everybody knew him. Alden Sheldon Rayner. He was a businessman, family man, father of Alden Rayner Jr. and Wanda. And for those in the sports world, he was St. George's Cricket Club stalwart. I think he played cup match for like 20 years, something along those lines. So he passed away last week, and his service was yesterday. And closer to town, we have the passing of Sensei Skipper Ingham, a business owner, a cook, U.S. Army soldier, a merchant seaman, a father, grandfather. He was, as according to one media source, he was the godfather of karate in Bermuda. He trained in karate in Manila, Osaka, and New York, and brought his skills back to Bermuda in 1970. That was the height of when everybody was watching karate movies and stuff like that.
Bruce Lee, Kung Fu.
Yes.
Enter the Dragon.
Yes. And started the Bermuda Karate Institute. I remember at one point in time it was on Angle Street.
Yes, by the church.
Right, across
from
the church.
Right.
So
and now it's on, I think, on King Street.
He started that in 1970. So he was the husband to Christina Ingham. Some people remember her as their school teacher. He's the father to Ricardo Gomez, Zenji Ingham, his wife Kelly, and Shomiko Mushashi. I may have pronounced that wrong, my apologies. And grandfather to Seiji, Kenji, Charlie, and Kayla. And I guess he was a father to many of us from Bacatown, not even Bacatown, Bermuda, right? Because if you ever wanted to put I guess fear of God in somebody, say, hey, I'll send you to Skip Ingham, and people will like immediately straighten up. But to the point about distinguished gentlemen, we have these pillars in society that they may not wear a suit, they may not have letters behind their name, but they have a stature in our society that not only demands respects, but teaches young men about how to carry themselves in our country, right? I had the privilege of a couple years ago, before COVID, being invited down to Trinity Church, where they have a dojo there. And Sensei Andrea McKee and Sensei Charles Butterfield have a dojo there. And they have an annual award ceremony around Easter time where they give awards to people who have the students, a lot of young students. And they had invited Skipper Ingham and his wife Sensei Christina down there for demonstrations and awards. So I had an opportunity to converse with him, and all I can say is like he exuded humbleness, right? He was at top of the alpha chart when it comes to karate, but he was very humble. So Bermuda has lost two distinguished gentlemen, Mr. Alden Rayner and Mr. Skipper Ingham. So we give condolences to their family for all their contributions, not just in sports or karate, but in just showing us younger men the way we should conduct ourselves. All right?
All right, sir.
So, Maddie, you want to say anything to people, Bermuda? I'm good. Okay. Got my little nephew, and Maddie is visiting from Halifax. But he said he's good. He doesn't want to say anything. He's studying PR and marketing at MS Mont St. Vincent. A lot of Bermudians go to Mont St. Vincent. So, yes. So, welcome him. Everybody in Bermuda's wearing like 3 coats. He's walking around with shorts and T-shirt talking about, I'm good, Uncle. I'm good.
Got his Jordans on?
Yeah. Is Jordans you got on?
I don't know.
No. Okay. But anyway, so...
Yeezys. Got Yeezys on.
Yeezys. Brother Dawn?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for everything.
Sure, man. Holiday tomorrow, right? Remembrance Day tomorrow?
Remembrance Day tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And lest we forget, there are people who gave their lives, Bermudians who gave their lives, that we can be free of tyranny of Hitler and other Germans. Yeah. But, yes, whatever you do on the holiday, please be safe. And we'll be back next week with another interesting guest. And we say...
And you have been listening to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson, JP.
You're locked to Power 95, Bermuda's big station at 94.9 FM, a Bermuda Broadcasting Company station.